Hi everyone, meteorologist Brian Bennett. Here's the very latest on Tropical Storm Nestor. Winds are 60 miles per hour. It is booking it to the northeast at 22 miles per hour. Expected to make landfall right around Port St. Joe at 7 a.m. Saturday morning. Very small chance that it could become a low-end Cat 1 hurricane. Pretty unlikely though, otherwise a tropical storm, being that it is a fast mover, it probably won't drop below tropical storm or extratropical storm status as it moves across Georgia and the Carolinas. So breezy conditions up through the Carolinas and Georgia. Otherwise, the storm is mainly going to be known for the storm surge potential and also an isolated tornado risk as well. Now, folks that are west of the center of circulation, which includes Panama City, Mobile, you don't need to worry about this storm because this storm is very lopsided. In fact, let's take a look at it on the infrared satellite imagery, and you can see the low is actually somewhere in this vicinity here on the left part of your screen, where the heavy convection, the bubbling cauldron, which is very appropriate this time of year, is to the right part of the storm. So as it moves off to the northeast, that means that folks to the right part of the storm will be receiving the heaviest rainfall and the gustiest winds as well. To the left of the center circulation, not really too much to talk about there. All right, let's take a look at the high resolution rapid refresh model. This is kind of a future model to show you basically what it will look like on radar over the coming hours and coming day for that matter. So for your Friday evening, we'll start to see a few scattered showers, maybe even a storm move across the Florida Peninsula, but the biggest storm still offshore. Moving into Saturday night, could see an isolated strong storm or two, and then the heavier rain becomes a little more likely as we move towards late Friday night and into early Saturday morning. So right around sunrise Saturday morning, that's where we're looking at the chance for some of these, we'll call them rain bands that are wrapping around that low pressure. So some heavy rain possible, brief periods of heavy rain with these tropical downpours as they move in Saturday morning, anywhere from basically Fort Myers all the way up through the Florida Peninsula and even up into the Tallahassee area could see some really heavy rainfall as well. So how much rain are we talking about? Well, let's go ahead in the future here again with the high resolution rapid refresh model. On average, about 1 to 2 inches of rain. Some areas a little bit less, some areas a little bit more, but about 1 to 2 inches of rain across the Tampa Bay area. Head farther north, once you get into the Big Bend area, that's where we could see on average about 3 to 4 inches of rain, and some locations up in the Big Bend could see possibly a maximum rainfall of around 7 inches or so. So some very heavy tropical downpours, definitely possible with this storm, but we're not looking at it just soaking one location for 2 days like some of the hurricanes or tropical storms we've seen recently. So heavy rain, definitely a possibility, but it'll be brief. So whatever ponding on area roads does occur should go away fairly quickly. And being that the ground has been so dry, we could actually use the rainfall. All right, let's take a look at the wind gust possibility. So what type of winds we can expect with a storm. So let me slide this up a little bit to show the panhandle. And here we are Friday evening. So 8 p.m. Friday evening, a little breezy at the coast, but nothing to really write home about. And then going into the middle of the night, here we are 2 a.m. Saturday early morning. And 2 a.m. we're seeing gusts right along the Tampa Bay coast, possibly around 30 to 35 miles per hour. Head up towards parts of the Big Bend, and we're seeing wind gusts in the red here, which represents gust possibly around 50 miles per hour at 2 o'clock in the morning. Fast forward a little bit more to right around, let's stop at, what do you say, sunrise. Here we are at sunrise, and this is when we could see some of the stronger winds that the storm has to offer. So at the immediate coastline, we'll see winds gusting on the order of possibly 50 miles per hour for parts of Anna Maria, Fort DeSoto, Clearwater Beach, and Pinellas County. Maybe even a little breezy for areas right along the bay, perhaps along the Howard Franklin and the Courtney Campbell and the Gandy could be a little breezy, and also in South Tampa as well. And farther north, down through parts of Pasco County, Hernando County, Citrus County, coastal areas could see wind gust on the order of 55, maybe a wind gust at the immediate beach locations around 60 miles per hour. Head inland, and those winds will deteriorate fairly rapidly. Inland locations like Orlando, maybe a wind gust to say 30, 35 miles per hour, unless you happen to get under, say, a stronger storm. Head farther north, the winds get a little bit stronger. We could say wind gust of, say, 60 miles per hour, maybe 65 miles per hour in parts of the Big Bend as we move into Saturday morning. Again, those storms move off to the northeast fairly rapidly, and then by Sunday, they are history, and this event will be gone for much of the southeast. All right, so one of the risk of this tropical storm would be the possibility for a waterspout or a tornado. We're looking at something here called the significant tornado parameter, and where you see the reds, that represents the model predicting the possibility for quite a bit of gate-to-gate wind shear. So that means possibility for a waterspout or maybe a tornado spinning up. So as we move towards sunrise on Saturday morning, I wouldn't be shocked at all if we happen to see a waterspout in the coastal locations anywhere from about Fort Myers, especially Sarasota and areas north, up through the Big Bend, could see a waterspout. And even a tornado could possibly occur as these, we'll call them rain bands, move over the peninsula through the early morning hours on Saturday. So do keep in mind there is a possibility for a tornadic thunderstorm with this tropical storm as it moves off to the northeast. Otherwise, the main headline from this tropical storm will be the rough surf, the rip currents, and also the possibility for some storm surge flooding as well. Here's a look at the European computer model wave height prediction. And let's go ahead here to the maximum. So Saturday morning, sunrise, the European model is predicting waves, pretty big waves. We're predicting waves here right around 10 feet, just a little bit offshore of parts of Tampa Bay. So the yellow representing 10-foot waves. Same thing goes all the way up through parts of the Big Bend and even as far as, say, the Mexico Beach area. So some rough surf, big time rough surf, rip currents, and also the possibility for storm surge flooding as well. Now, whether you'll have storm surge flooding depends on whether the winds are blowing onshore or blowing offshore. So here we are Friday evening, and not sure if you can see these little arrows or not, but this represents the direction that the ocean currents are moving. So Friday evening, the surf is moving generally from south to north along the western side of the Florida Panhandle. So storm surge flooding really shouldn't be an issue for your Friday evening, not until those winds turn more onshore. So the winds start to turn onshore by about 2 a.m. early Saturday morning, and they are definitely blowing onshore as we head towards sunrise on Saturday morning. That's when we could see the greatest risk for storm surge. Basically, about 2 a.m. Saturday to about, I'd say, 10 or 11 a.m. Saturday morning would be the highest risk for storm surge with these onshore currents and very large surf as well. And then again, that rapidly moves off once the storm exits the southeastern United States, which will be happening on Sunday. So a very fast mover. Also tide, the tides are very important to storm surge. And here's a look at the expected tides for Clearwater. And Clearwater actually has a low tide that will occur at 9:51 p.m. Clearwater Beach has the next high tide at 3:15 a.m. And then the waters, just based on astronomical parameters, drop about 2.5 feet by about 10:41 a.m. So we're actually looking at pretty good timing here as far as reducing the storm surge risk with the combination of the winds and the storm and the astronomical tides. That's because some of the strongest winds along the coast will actually be occurring during low tide. So a little bit of good news there. Doesn't mean the storm surge flooding is not going to occur. In fact, I do believe we're going to have storm surge flooding, especially in your more prone locations. Here's a great map. If you'd like to look at this map, it's on the National Hurricane Center site, nhc.noaa.gov, and it's called an inundation map. And basically it shows you the possibility for flooding in your location. The blue represents inundation of about 1 foot. That means water on shore in a location that would normally be dry. So you can see parts of the intracoastal locations near Holmes Beach and Anna Maria Island, perhaps seeing a little bit of inundation in that location. A few spots looking at yellow that represents 3 foot inundation. So your more prone locations from basically Siesta Key all the way up through Holmes Beach, Anna Maria could see some inundation or a little bit of storm surge flooding in your typical locations. You know where you are, and you know if your locations are a little more prone to storm surge flooding. Same thing goes, you head up through Fort DeSoto, 1 to 3 foot inundation possible. Same thing around Pasco. A lot of low-lying locations there have the possibility of having a little bit of storm surge flooding. If you've seen it with previous tropical storms, then chances are you might see a little bit of storm surge flooding with this storm as well. Heading up the coast, northern Clearwater, we're looking at the possibility for some 3 foot inundation as well. So we could see water levels rise a fair amount in that location. Nothing catastrophic, but definitely something that could bring it into some neighborhoods that are a little more prone to storm surge flooding. The farther north you go, the greater the chance for the inundation, which is true with just about any storm that moves up into this Big Bend area of Florida. It's kind of a catchment for any type of winds. All the waves kind of end up in this little funnel here, and we have low-lying locations as well, so that's why we see the greater chance for inundation of easily 3 feet in many of the low-lying locations and marshy locations up around the Big Bend. Same thing goes heading farther west, a little bit of inundation possible up through Sewanee area and Steinhatchee. But once you get to Panama City, then you're on the western side. That means winds will be blowing off land to the Gulf of Mexico, and that means the storm surge flooding isn't really a concern for your location. All right, remember earlier, just a bit earlier, I showed you the waves and the wind direction here. Actually, the graphic's not showing right now, but basically the winds will be blowing from the south to the north. And one little extra point of interest I have here is that we do have some red tide that's occurring right around Naples and Sanibel right now. And with winds blowing from the south to the north, that brings up a bit of a question here. It really depends on how concentrated the Carenia brevis is in this area, whether it'll help to transport some of the red tide farther north. Now, if it's not too concentrated, the large surf could actually help to dilute some of the Carenia brevis and reduce red tide that's happening in this location. But if it is concentrated in some splotchy areas offshore, that could actually help to push some of the concentrated areas of Carenia brevis farther north, which could kind of drag red tide just a tad farther north. So just something to put in the back of your mind there. Obviously not the greatest concern right now. The greatest concern, again, with a storm would be storm surge flooding in your typical locations along the west coast of Florida and up through the Big Bend, and the possibility for isolated tornadoes, especially Saturday morning. All right, everybody, that's the latest for now. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a comment. As you know, I'll be watching this storm, and if anything changes, I will be right on top of it. And looking at the radar right now, we do have these storms that are wrapping counterclockwise around that area of low pressure. Some offshore storms producing some pretty hefty rainfall. These storms are moving off to the north, and again, could possibly produce a waterspout. So something to keep an eye on throughout the late Friday evening and Saturday morning. Again, that's all for now. Have a great and safe evening.